Thank you, Jerry. Traditionally, this is the graveyard slot. So in my 12 minutes, I have 21 slides. So it's going to be a bit fast and furious, but we're going to go with pace and energy. So, extreme risks, the irreversibility of time, and the retirement anomaly. Retirement, of course, whether you consider human history to be 500,000 years long or 5,000 years long, retirement is a very modern invention. The idea of working until you're 65 and then having self-funded, self-sufficient leisure time is a mere handful of decades old. So I think, interesting question, is this sustainable or is it just a passing anomaly? Then, of course, we need to think about the system. A retirement system has to survive for a long time to make good on its mission of providing pensions to all beneficiaries. So if you have a system that's around for a long time, a lot will happen. So I think it was Lenin who said there are decades when nothing happens and there are weeks when decades happen. What he was referring to, of course, were extreme risks. Weeks when decades happen. So extreme risks matter. And if you start thinking about extreme risks, I think you quickly get to two further questions. One, could the probability of this event, while it looks ludicrous, actually be higher than we think? And two, how useful is probabilistic thinking anyway? Now, I know that's bordering on heresy, but bear with me and I'll try and convince you. So, in the paper, I try and make the case for why we should not think of the world in terms of what I label the traditional worldview. Traditional worldview has various labels attached to it, like equilibrium, like stationarity, like linearity, and normal distribution. And instead, I try and make the case that we need to think about markets and economies as complex adaptive systems, and if we do, the labels change. We get to punctuated equilibria. Phase transition. Phase transition, think of that as Jim's regimes changing through time that we heard about this morning. Nonlinearity and power law distributions. So as a picture is worth 1,000 words, here's the right-hand side of a normal distribution in solid red, and 3 power law distributions where the exponent just changes. The only thing you need to take away from this is fatter tails. But not just fatter tails. When you are out at an extreme value, the probability under a power law distribution is orders of magnitude greater than under a normal distribution. So I think in the paper I mentioned we assess probabilities given our state of knowledge. Given that scientific process is one continuous effort to correct the flaws in our state of knowledge at any given time. You know, one time we thought that the sun revolved around the Earth until that was corrected. So the probability of an event is conditioned on our understanding of the world, but we know that our understanding of the world is wrong, and therefore we should accept that our probability assessments are wrong. So I'm arguing that extreme risks are actually going to be much higher than we think, because we need to think about the world in different terms. Next, we move on to the second question, and we need to think about the irreversibility of time. So I've got a great bet for you. Don't worry about my credit. So I'm going to offer you the chance to roll a fair die. Roll 1 to 5, and I am going to pay you 50% of your wealth. So you go from your wealth of 1 to your wealth of 1.5 in seconds. This is all your assets, your plants, your pension, and the present value of your future earnings. I mean, this is a fabulous deal. But if you roll a 6, I keep your existing wealth. So, of course, here are the outcomes. Do the sums. The expected return on this bet is 25%. You would be crazy not to take this bet. And yet when I try and get people to take this bet, they don't want to. So either they don't trust my credit, or there's something going on in here. And I think it's because, again, we've been trained to use the wrong formula. So we're using a probabilistic expected return. And essentially, that's the ensemble average. It's the average over all possible outcomes. And the formula is essentially saying we're going from T0, we've got wealth at T0, and we go to T1. So we could be in a world where we get 1.5 times our wealth, But actually, we're actually going to split the world into 6 parallel universes. We run all of them to T1. We sum or we average over the outcomes at T1, and effectively we travel back in time to say that at T0, I've got a 25% expected return. You can't do time, well, I'm assuming you can't do time travel, I can't. So instead, and actually this 25% return is hiding within it a 17% probability that you're dead. You have no wealth. Your game is over. You cannot recover financially. And so that is why, intuitively, people don't want to do this bet. Instead, of course, we know that we live in a single universe, and time goes in one direction only. So to do the proper calculation, we should run the 6 outcomes in series, not do them in parallel, and the time average return on this bet is, of course, minus 100%. You will lose all your assets if you get all 6 outcomes. It doesn't matter where you roll the 6, you lose everything. So that's how I get to my heretical point. Probabilistic thinking is limited in its usefulness. When you are dealing with extreme risks, you need to think about conditional outcomes at least as much as the small probability of getting there. That's the segue into extreme risks themselves. By definition, they're very unlikely, but have a large impact if they happen. I've made the case that they matter because we live in a single universe. I've talked about the assessment depending on our state of knowledge, and also the fact that they're more frequent, or I would argue they're more frequent than previously thought. I see the world in terms of 6 categories. They are overlapping. That's what the graphic is meant to get at. I haven't got sports or the art, which are important, but don't relate to pensions or investment much. And I was asked to concentrate on the non-economic extreme risks. And so I give you, ladies and gentlemen, the pests. The risks arising from politics, environment, society, and technology. And I've got 5 of each for you. No time to think about them. Read the paper. It's a cracking read. Thank you. If you're slightly morbid in your outlook. Political risks essentially arise from some sort of policy mistake. And you can look at the pictures, read the text. I haven't got time. Environmental risks. This is where it looks as though I have completely lost the plot. Do we worry about alien invasion? Now, I talk quite a lot about this in the paper, and I put it in deliberately because I want to challenge your mindset. Are you open-minded enough to even consider it? The fact of the matter is, our state of knowledge cannot preclude this as a possible outcome. Now, we are going to apply filters later on, and I'll get there, so I'm not asking you to worry about it. I'm just asking you to be open-minded about them. Natural catastrophe, sorry, I should have said, all of these extreme risks are the worst possible manifestation of everything that I'm showing you. So an alien invasion could be incredibly beneficial. They could be friendly, they could bring us useful technology, or they could kill us. So what we're scoring here is the fact that they could kill us. And a natural catastrophe, they happen every day. So actually, what's going on here is either a magnitude 10 earthquake causing a 40-meter tsunami driven ashore by a Category 5 windstorm. Unlikely, but that's the extreme version. Or it's a supervolcano, like the one that occurred 75,000 years ago and caused a kind of a natural winter for a few years. Social stuff, again, haven't got time for. It's only in pensions that we count extreme longevity as a risk. And as it's been adequately covered, great over lunch, I won't do that. Health progress backfire is quite interesting. You know, resistance to antibiotics, certainly a big issue in the UK with the chief medical scientist saying that in 20 years' time we could have a problem. Technology basically relies on error or terror for the first 4. You can set yourself up you can sequence DNA for the price of a second-hand car, and the Ebola virus and Spanish flu virus, all of that's on the internet, so you can download it and make your own if you want to. Technological singularity is where the machines take over, so all those films that you've seen, that's when it comes to pass. And I mean, it sounds crazy, but kind of read about it and you kind of think, oh, actually, we just don't know. So we have 20 risks. We need to assess them. I've given each one of them 4 scores for likelihood, intensity of impact, uncertainty of either likelihood or intensity of impact, and then the scope of impact. And I should say the process that I've used is qualitative, it's deductive, it's do we know enough to say that this couldn't happen, rather than inductive, which is go and look at past data, okay, we haven't been invaded by aliens, therefore we won't be. So that's the difference. I asked a colleague of mine to create a 2D chart with 4 dimensions of data on. If you include the labels, he managed 5. I think this is a thing of rare beauty, but it takes a bit of getting used to. Essentially, it says that the more likely stuff doesn't hurt as much, the really unlikely stuff is what kills you. There's also a monotonic relationship between stuff that has a local impact getting through to pan-generational or affects all humans ever after. So existential risks or the severely crushing risks, don't worry about it. The crushing risks, we know because your assets are invested globally, your assets are going to get hammered. Your liabilities tend to be much more local, so we don't know what's going to happen to them. Endurable risks, context-specific, and as we've noted, extreme longevity is a pension outlier. If you construct an algorithm to combine those 4 scores, you can get a ranking. This is my ranking. Alien invasion ranks at 19. So again, I wouldn't waste too much energy. What I would think about is the top 5. We also include an association matrix. Think of this as trying to get to second-order impacts. So this is the top left-hand corner of the table, and it shows, if you read across a row, political extremism is likely to cause World War III, could cause a global trade collapse or terrorism. If you read down the columns, political extremism is likely to be caused by anarchy and could be caused by global trade collapse, terrorism, and World War III, and there's obviously the 20 by 20 in the paper. That gets us to, oh, I'm out of, do you want me to stop? That gets me to the retirement anomaly. So we do a global pension study every year. The 13 largest pension markets in the world have average pension assets of 78% of GDP. My simple model of saving 10% of your earnings for 40 years and growing it at whatever basically says an economy needs pension assets of 235% of GDP to support people in the manner to which they are expecting. Can you do that? I think this is Keynes' paradox of thrift. It's rational for an individual to save more for their retirement. If everybody does it, you reduce the rate of return and you kill the growth of the economy. So, my conclusion is retirement will be rationed and expectations is the mechanism for doing that. You will not retire at 65 and have an indefinite, self-funded, happy, quality retirement. So extreme risks are a threat, and the takeaway, better beliefs and risk management, spend some time on pre-mortems, think about these things, use it for stress testing. You might be able to hedge some things, but most of the things that I've talked about are very hard to hedge. Cash is probably the best general hedge. It has a very high option value when everything is falling apart. But of course, for those of you running pension funds, make sure they're very well funded and overfunded. Ha ha. My final slide says he's mad, don't listen to him. Thank you, Jerry.